Welcome to this week's Tuesday Tips. It's a really important topic. We're going to talk about what can happen when your aging parents do not have their affairs in order and why it can be such a gift. So, you are blessed with having both of your nurse advocates with us tonight. So, Linda is joining us tonight on our Tuesday Tips, and Linda has a personal story that she's going to share with us this evening. And it's all about what kind of things can happen to a family when the affairs are not in order. So, Linda, I'm going to go ahead and let you start off. Just give a little background on your parents and what's happened over the last couple of years without having anything in writing. No synopsis here.
Yeah, let's. Do we have 3 years?
No.
uh, well, welcome everyone. I'm Linda Criticus, the other half of Your Nurse Advocate Consulting, and my personal story is truly about my parents. And you would think, with me being an advocate, that this would not even be happening to me or my parents, but unfortunately, my parents, being who they are, and my mom was 93 and my dad is 92. This story starts a few years back, but I'm not going to give you, I'll just give you the summary and the highlights. I'm not going to drone 3 years worth of issues with you. So, my parents, my mom especially, was a believer that if you put a will together, you were going to die. Having a will and putting your affairs in order was a superstition that she believed that would cause her to have bad luck. So she felt that it was not important to have or to execute a will, a power of attorney, to do any type of estate planning. She also felt, because she had her own faculties, that she was bright and that she was intelligent and that she did not have dementia, that she could manage all of these things throughout all of her life. My dad is a lot more passive than my mom, and he agreed with her and said, well, when your mom's ready to do this, we'll do it. Well, come to be that years went by and they never did it, even though I had mentioned it to them at holidays and at birthday parties. We really need to get these affairs in order. We really need to move forward so that we, as your children, know what your wishes are if something happens. Well, the something happened. My mom fractured her hip about 5 years ago and was in the hospital. And she was one that never believed in doctors and never believed in hospitals. And it was the first time of a real encounter for her for being in the healthcare system. So it was very hard for her when people would come in and say, do you want to be resuscitated? Well, she didn't even know what that meant. She says, what do you mean resuscitated? I'm alive. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And even though we explained it to her, what would happen, she's like, well, I want everybody to do everything they can for me. Okay, that's fine. Then we won't have you as a DNR. That's fine. She didn't even understand that, at her age, that, those types of things could have severe and significant consequences. But again, she's her own person. She made her own decisions. And there was nothing we were going to do about it. So moving forward, let's say to last year, the 3 years after she had her fracture, she ended up going to rehab, which she hated. And then she was actually able to come home under home health. But again, the home health company, just as we also did, said you really need to look at possibly executing a DNR or a power of attorney for healthcare or a durable power of attorney in case something happens to you. And again, her comment was, I don't need that. That's superstitious. You do that, you're going to die right away. I don't need that. I don't want that. Don't force me. And she actually got very angry with us when we tried to actually talk to her about how important it was for her. She said, well, everything goes to you kids. Well, if it's not in writing, it doesn't go to us kids. You can't, it goes into probate. Well, she didn't understand what probate meant. She didn't understand. She thought that if she said it goes to us, that it goes to us. I said, well, when you're gone, you can't tell anybody that it goes to us. And unless it's in writing, it's not done. So she hemmed and she hawed and she hemmed and she hawed. And, I finally, when her health started declining significantly and my dad's dementia started getting progressively worse, I was able to engage both of them into becoming their powers of attorney for healthcare. But that only solved a portion of the problem, because even though I was allowed to make decisions for their health care, when bills came in for my mom's health care, I could not discuss with the hospital or the rehab facility anything about those bills. I couldn't ask them to recode it. I couldn't ask them to set up a payment plan. I couldn't do any of that because I was not her financial power of attorney or the owner of her finances. Because a power of attorney, just so you all know, ends or deceases when that individual dies. You have to be an executor on the estate or an owner of accounts to be able to write checks, move money around, or actually deal with the assets that these individuals have at the end of life. So I had a very hard time trying to deal with her bills. And she kept getting these bills and she's saying, why am I getting these bills? Why am I getting these bills? Well, the hospital isn't a hotel, Mom. And when you choose not to have any treatment done and you say, I don't want you to do that EKG, I don't want that stress test, I don't want that, but yet you want to sit there and eat 3 meals a day, they're going to charge you, and Medicare's not going to pay for it. Neither is any insurance company. So she didn't understand why she had such bills. But again, I couldn't help her with that. Nor did she want to sign over financial power of attorney to me or any of her children. She said, my money is mine and I'm going to deal with it and I will take care of the bills. Except that she really couldn't, because her vision was poor, her hearing was poor, and she really could not deal with these issues. So as her health declined, she ended up going into hospice. And when she went into hospice, we talked to her about, what do you want to have done if something happens to you, if your heart stops, if you can't make any decisions, or if you can't speak for yourself, what do you want done? And she looked at me and she says, I don't want anything done. I'm too old to have anything done, so just don't do anything. So we made her a DNR. But my siblings were not all in agreement with her being a DNR. They felt that she needed or should have aggressive treatment at the age of, at that time, 92. So, but being her power of attorney for healthcare, I explained to them how important this decision was, and that because of her frail nature and her overall condition, that being a DNR would be a blessing for her, because we wouldn't want anybody to do any type of aggressive therapy because of her hospice diagnosis. So that was all fine and good, except that she really could not go to the bank anymore and write checks for the bills. And my dad, with his dementia, really couldn't deal with the bills, didn't understand them, didn't remember what bills were coming in. And he was starting to write checks for like charities. Every charity that came in, he thought it was a bill, and he started writing checks for them. But we never knew that what money was coming in and out of the accounts, because we did not have any oversight. Finally, one of my sisters actually, and I think in a moment of my parents' true anxiety, they agreed to allow somebody to become a owner of the accounts, and there were 4 accounts. So she became an owner of those 4 accounts, so she could then start paying the bills. And because she was an owner, she could then work with the electric company, the gas company, the hospital bills, and those types of things to take care of those types of bills. But it's a very difficult type of situation, because if they would have planned ahead of time, a lot of these very anxiety producing decisions would have been dealt with in a more proactive way than in a reactive way. And the only reason that my sibling, was able to get on the accounts was because it was reactive, because their property taxes were due, and they got a letter because their property taxes were late. They got a letter for disconnection of gas and electric because the bill wasn't paid. They got a disconnection notice for the insurance on the home and on their supplemental. So they were getting all these notices for disconnection, and they were freaking out because they thought they paid these bills. They thought they did these things, and they didn't. So it was only through this reactive state that we were able, or that she was able, to get on these accounts to start paying these bills and getting their finances in order. And in the meantime, I'm dealing with getting my mom the care she needs in hospice, and my dad getting him cared for. And in the meantime, as my mom was in her very final stages of hospice, my dad fell and broke his hip and ended up in the hospital 3 days before my mom passed. And so we were running back and forth between the two of them. And because I was his power of attorney, I had not at that point incapacitated him, because when I tried to incapacitate him, he answered all the questions correctly. So the doctors weren't comfortable in incapacitating him, even though my sisters and I all knew that the man, my father, couldn't really remember anything and was totally distressed and disoriented when it came to doing his normal day-to-day activities. Sometimes he didn't even remember who we were. But yet the physicians were uncomfortable in deeming him incapacitated because at certain times he was extremely lucid and he would answer the questions correctly. It wasn't until he went into the rehab facility that I was able to deem him incapacitated and take over making those decisions for him in regards to his health care. And the reason this was so important was because before he was discharged from the hospital after the hip surgery, going into the rehab, he decided he was going to go home and live at home and have somebody live with him, and he was going to pay for somebody to be there. So the social worker at the hospital took him for his word and started setting up for him to return home with a caregiver who he was supposedly going to pay for. Now, there was no way he was going to go home because he really couldn't walk. He couldn't manage stairs. He hadn't really started therapy at that point. So I really don't understand how the social worker thought that this was a really good idea. And, but he was going to have someone come there. So she started giving him pamphlets for home care agencies to come there. So when I went to the hospital to visit him, I saw these and I go, Dad, what are these things for? And he said, oh, these are for the people that are going to come and stay at the house for me. And they're going to do it. They're going to live there with me, and they're just going to take care of me, or they're going to be there during the day, and then I'll just be there at night by myself. And I said, excuse me? I said, and when did this idea come into fruition? He says, oh, well, I've been thinking a lot about it. And, you know, I really need to be at the house. I need to be at the house. Dad, you can't be at the house. There's no one at the house. Mom has passed away. The house is being cleared out. We remember we all discussed about this. We talked about getting the house ready for possible sale. Oh, no, I don't want it sold now. I want to go back to the house. I'm going to live there. And because he was not at that point deemed incapacitated, he had every right to say he wanted to go back to his house, even though we all knew that it was the most unsafe thing he could do because he couldn't even navigate the stairs, much less take care of himself, much less cook for himself. And there was really nobody else there that could care for him. And the house needed some upgrading and some clutter removed, and that to even make it feasible for him to even be there. This was not a realistic option. But again, because he was not deemed incapacitated, he actually could make that decision. But I was able to talk him off the ledge. We were able to get him into rehab, where actually he has done very well in rehab, and he has vacillated back and forth about going back home or going to an assisted living. But he does know that I now make all of his healthcare decisions. He still has input and he still has rights, and he can still refuse. Just because a person is deemed incapacitated doesn't mean that they lose their rights as an individual. They maintain their rights, but when it comes to the critical thinking and higher functioning levels of decision making, that's where the power of attorney for healthcare comes in. once it's activated, because there's no way I would allow him to go home to be able to be unsafe or to hurt himself or to possibly hurt others. And also, just a little afterthought on that, he did say that, when I go back to the house, and this was before incapacitation, when I go back to the house, I think I'm going to want to get a car and drive. I think I'm going to be able, this way, the caregiver we can take turns driving me to my appointments. Well, we took the keys away from him 4 years ago. So that was not happening. So if my parents had the foresight of not thinking this was superstitious, and this is not just them, a lot of individuals in this age group, in this silent generation, feel that they want to handle things on their own. They don't want to trust things to other people, whereas others are very, very proactive in saying, you know what, I really need to get things in order. I don't want my children to have to deal with this. I want things done a certain way. So before my mom passed, with the help of my sister and myself and hospice, she did plan her own funeral, which was a great thing, because that was the one thing. And I think she finally realized that this was getting close. And as she told her hospice nurse, I'm not leaving this up to their father to deal with this, because he can't remember what he ate for breakfast. So I'm not leaving this up to him to do. So she planned her own funeral. She planned everything from the readings to the songs to the type of casket to what she wanted to wear to paying for her gravesite. Everything has been done for her and my dad. But it took a reactive measure, a reactive issue to bring this into fruition, which caused a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration, and pretty much a lot of quality of time that we could have been spending with our parents as their children, instead of dealing with and being frustrated and arguing with them about needing to do certain things, or where are the bills at, where did you put them, why are they not here, where's the checkbook, what did you eat for dinner, where are you getting your groceries, what do you mean this person's putting cement in the yard, why are you needing these things? It's very hard to be, especially since none of us live very close to my parents. It's hard for us to be there all the time. So a lot of the things that we were doing were very siloed. And if we would have had something that was written by them, orchestrated by them proactively, such as an estate planning guide where it spelled out their funeral, it spelled out the types of care they wanted at the end of life, who they wanted to deal with their monies, who they wanted to deal with their health care, who they wanted to deal with all these. If they would have done that, years ago, a lot of the anxiety that we felt as their children, and I think as they felt as parents, could have been taken away. And we could have spent, as I said, more quality time just spending time with them, and not when we were there with them dealing with the bills and dealing with the issues and dealing with the cleaning and the charities and the money and the medications and all the things that we were needing to deal with as caregivers, because they really did not do planning in regards to what they needed at the end of life, when they could no longer make these decisions for themselves. And it has been a long 2 years in regards to this.
So Linda, now I know they didn't have any, any estate planning. So now what's going to happen with the house? I mean, who has the authority to sell the house? Where does the money go? How does that get divided up? There's nothing in writing. So what's going to happen? Is that going to end up in probate?
Well, with my mom, what she did with my sister, when she finally put my sister on there, she had, my sister is an owner of the accounts. So that's the savings accounts, the investment accounts, and that. And they put the house in a trust. The financial advisor at the bank suggested that they put the house in a trust, and they have trustees that oversee it when my dad goes. When my mom passed away, the house and its ownership went to my dad. Once he became incapacitated, the trustees now oversee that trust. And the trust is just the home. It's just the house. So the trustees are responsible to providing copies of the trust to us so that we know how this is all taken care of. And they're responsible to having us know where this money is going. Bank statements such as who's paying the bills, because the one thing, even though they're my siblings and they're my sister, things a lot of times can be paid for that are frivolous. One of the things that we discussed on a family conference call was that my mom had a $21,000 hospital bill. Well, they have their cash flow, they have a lot of investments, but they don't have a lot of cash flow. And my dad needs care at the assisted living, which requires cash and a reserve amount of cash in order for him to stay there. So until these assets can be sold or, you know,
Liquidated. Yeah.
liquidated, yes, that's
Mhm.
the correct word, we have to use the cash. Well, she wanted to take what cash there was and pay this $21,000 hospital bill right away. And I said, no, you don't need to do that. You have the power as this person who is owning these finances to call the hospital, set up a payment plan. And then when the house is sold, or when after dad passes
Mhm.
and the house is sold, the remainder of that can come out of the estate. You do not need to liquidate, a portion of the cash that he needs to for care in order to do this. But again, if this stuff was done prior to all this and all of these things were divided, it wouldn't be left up to us to figure it all out and kind of figure out where all this stuff needs to be. And in truth, my mom had a lot of assets and she had a lot of investments, and we're not even sure if we have all of her investments or we know where all of her investment accounts are. There still could be some sitting out there that none of us even know about. My mom's, we found several bank envelopes with money in it when we were going through the house last weekend. I mean, hundreds of dollars that were just in the house, which I don't even know if she knew she had or didn't have. My dad didn't know. And so it's a very volatile, in a sense, very dynamically changing kind of condition, because nothing is straightforward right now, because the trustees are now looking at the house and trying to figure out how we sell it. We're figuring out, okay, dad needs to go into an assisted living. We have to liquidate this. We have to pull from here. We have to do this. Nothing was set up by them to make this easier on them and also cause us less angst, because in a sense it's extremely frustrating, because we don't know where all of her money is. We don't have a clear picture of any of this. Even the trustees for the house, and even my sister, who is the owner of their accounts, she's not sure that there's not another account somewhere. So she's playing research and calling the financial advisor, and she's calling some of the papers that she found in my mom's drawer to see if there's other accounts that are still open and if there's money in those
Yeah.
accounts.
I mean, did she have life insurance that could have covered her funeral?
Exactly. We don't know. See, we
Yeah.
don't know any of these things. And that's
And
what makes this so frustrating, because my mom was both of my parents are college educated people, and they planned very well. They provided for us well as we were growing up, but what they didn't do was plan very well for themselves for their later years. I mean, yes, they had 401k, my dad had a pension, those types of things, but they never really planned on how things were going to end up, or when they couldn't make decisions, what should happen and who should be responsible and where all these things are. I mean, they have so many tools out there now. And I actually brought her a book about 5 years ago when she was in rehab. I said, this will give you something to do, Mom, while you're sitting here in between your therapy sessions. You can put together all of the places where you have accounts, all of your financial advisor, where you have accounts, things that you want for, your end of life. And her comment to me was, what are you trying to do? Kill me off already? I'm not dead yet. I go, but Mom, we want to help you. We want to make sure that you're taken care of. I'll be fine. I'm taking care of myself. I've been doing it for this long. I'll do it again. So
you know,
again, she did not fill out the book.
Linda, as we wrap up, I just want you to take a minute because, a lot of people that don't know you personally. I mean, you're the oldest of 6 children. You
Yep.
have siblings that live on opposite coasts. So
Mhm.
without these things put together and in writing, what has that done to your sibling unit?
It's actually put a big strain on our sibling unit. I actually, because I'm a nurse, a lot of the caregiving and the responsibility for the care and oversight of my parents' care and well-being has fallen onto me. I have another sister who is a social worker who doesn't live far from me. And she actually, her and I have been carrying most of the weight of this and carrying the load for the last 5 years for caring for both of them, because a lot of this has been put onto us. Um, I have other siblings. One sibling does what she can whenever she feels it's appropriate. She'll do what she wants to do when she wants to do it and not really communicate to the rest of us about it. The one that lives on one coast, well, I'll come in on vacation and we'll see if what I can do. But basically, their whole philosophy is, well, you're there, so you do it. And you're the nurse, so you should do it. And so their thing is, oh, well, thank you for caring for them, but there's no real relief, and there has not been any relief for myself or my other sister, basically, for 5 years. I mean, when she goes on vacation, she's actually, they call her on vacation. They call me on vacation. I mean, when my mom was alive, I would get calls at 10, 11 o'clock at night, about, well, my oxygen concentrator isn't working. Okay, well, let's call hospice. No, I want you to deal with it. Or my dressing came off. I want you to deal with it. Or we need groceries, or we need to go to the bank. And the two that live on the other side of the world, on either side of the coast, I mean, I understand they live there, but yet there really hasn't been a large effort on their part to take any of the caregiving responsibilities away, except when they would come normally in for their vacations to see other family members or friends. And then I have another sibling who is just totally MIA and chooses not to be involved at all. But, when I hate to say it, when there's money involved, he'll be the first one standing in line.
And
So,
it's hard. It when the decisions aren't made and things aren't in order, it does. It's like throws everything up for grabs, and I think it brings out the worst in everybody because nobody knows what to do. It's easy to say, okay, this is what mom and dad want. It's easy to follow that, but when that's not there, everybody has an opinion, and everybody
right.
wants to weigh in on that. And so, as we wrap up, and we really want to thank Linda for sharing this personal story. And for those of you that don't know, this has all just come to a head. Linda's just getting off of, the funeral right before Christmas with her mom. So this is all still very much in progress and in process with Linda. And we want to share this next Wednesday, 7 o'clock Central Time. We are going to do a Zoom, and I'll throw the link up here. We are going to do a live free workshop called Getting Your Affairs in Order. We're going to have a checklist for you. We've got a workbook for you. We're going to do everything that we can in an hour and a half to bring you all the information to try and help your parents understand that this is what they need to do in order to make it easier for the kids. And maybe, trying to look at that approach. But we're going to discuss all of this. We're going to have everything for you. So we just, encourage you to join us next Wednesday. Here's the link. Sign up. It's free. And we will get you much more information. This is truly a topic. A lot of people procrastinate about this. So it's the beginning of the year, new goals, resolutions, things like that. Let's get this off the checklist and get your affairs in order. Linda, is there something you'd like to say in wrapping up?
Yeah, it is so important. And that because of all of this, I have made sure that my affairs for my children are in order. So there is no question about what I need, what I want, and what is appropriate for me at the end of my life, or if I become incapacitated or unable to make decisions. I will not put my children through what my siblings and I have gone through with my parents. Excuse me.
And
I will
with
not.
that being, yeah,
Mhm.
with that being said, you know, it's never too soon to take action and put your affairs in order. This isn't
Mhm.
only for those, aging adults that
Mhm.
are, looking at, the final journey. It's for all of us.
Mhm.
And this has been a real eye opener for all of us. So you're never too I say young to get your
Right.
affairs in order. So
And I've even told my boys and my daughter, well, my daughter has already taken care of it, but my boys, I actually told them, I said, just because you're single doesn't necessarily mean if you're traveling to wherever in the country, if something happens to you, there's no guarantee that they're going to call me and ask me what your wishes are. You, even though you're in your 20s, you really need to have some identifier of what your wishes are. God forbid if something happened to you and they do not think to call me. I mean, you would want your wishes honored. So I suggest that you put something together. And of course, they looked at me like I was crazy. Well, why would I want to do that? I'm not old. I'm not sick. I'm like, yeah, but things happen.
you know
Things
and
happen.
and
Mhm.
that brings up a really, I'll make this really quick. Another advocate shared a story with us where her college, she was over 18. Her daughter was in college. She was, a couple of states away. She got in a car accident. She was comatose. Her parents didn't even know about it because, that hospital was very strict with HIPAA. And because she was an adult and there wasn't anything in writing saying that they could share information with their parents sat in the waiting room for 3 days and was told they could not get any information from the doctor until if she woke up, and then she would give them permission. I mean, I know that's not that strict because some states are a next of kin state where they can't talk to them, but some states, are not a next of kin state, such as our state of Wisconsin. So it's really important, no matter how what your age is to have things in writing. So again,
Mhm.
check out the link. Come and join us next Wednesday. We'll be glad to share some more with you on helping you know how to get those affairs in order. So hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.